Welcome back, everybody. Today we have a special treat for you. We are going to be reviewing this Norinco Polytech Legend milled underfolding AK. So these ones did not come into the United States for very long, so they're relatively rare rifles. Now when these came in back in the late 80s, they were going for approximately $500 to $550. So looking at that today, obviously that seems like a great deal. But at the time, other AKs from various countries were coming in and were priced approximately $250 to $300. Of course, you have to add in inflation and all that stuff. But at the time, this was kind of a premium rifle. And back then, a lot of folks really thought, it's kind of hard to believe today, but a lot of folks really thought that Chinese AKs were junk. So really, the sales of these weren't that great, like you would expect them to be for the quality of the rifles that they are. Of course, nowadays, it's pretty much unanimous thinking in the AK community that the milled Norinco Polytechs like this are some of the best AKs that were ever made. I agree with that. Again, it's pretty common thought process in today's market, but back then it simply wasn't so. So there's just not a ton of them in the country. So what we're going to do today is take a look at some of the details of the rifle here. Basically what makes it a Norinco Polytech Legend, do a bunch of shooting with it, which certainly I always enjoy doing. And then at the end, we'll sort of give you a synopsis of what I think of it overall. We'll work our way from the front of the rifle on back just to keep it somewhat organized. Up front, we do have 14mm threads, and what you see on there is a milled slant break. Now, from various resources on the web, I've found that most folks are saying these came with a muzzle nut. However, the gentleman who loaned this to me said that his did come with this as well as a muzzle nut. So not sure really how many came like that or what the story is there, but it certainly matches the bluing exact. It appears to be an actual milled part, so it really kind of would fit in line with what you'd expect here on the rifle. So sort of interesting there. Front sight block, nothing to write home about, pretty standard stuff there. It does not have the hooded front sight like some of the stamped Chinese AKs do, and we'll continue to move on back. But we'll note that we do have a cleaning rod. I know some of you guys really geek out about that. That's cool. That's you. So we do have our gas block here. Again, it's an all milled part. It is chrome lined on the interior for corrosion resistance, and we do have our sling attachment point here. And like other Chinese AKs, it's actually a moving sort of part, unlike a lot of the other nationality AKs where it's actually milled in and it's one piece. This is actually a two-piece design. The gas tube is vented on both the right and the left side, has 4 holes on each side, and the handguard here is made of what I believe is a chew wood. It's spelled CHU. It has the darker finish. Some of the Polytechs came in with a lighter finish as well, so you'll see both out there, and both, I suppose, are correct. So our rear sight here, standard stuff, all the way out from 1 to 800 meters graduations, so you can slide it forward and then of course slide it on back down. So 800 meters, sort of optimistic for the round, but it's pretty common for most AKs. Of course, one thing that folks always geek out about with these rifles is the milled receiver itself. So it's milled from one piece of steel. It's cold hammer forged steel. It has nice finish all the way around. Bluing matches up on both the top cover, the receiver, the barrel. So fit and finish wise, it's simply superb. Has the lightning cuts here on the right and the left side. You take a look there in the mag well, you'll see that it is very nicely machined out. There's no rough edges or anything like that you see on some of the other nationalities of AKs. You can see the rivets here on the trigger guard, flawless again. So really the receiver is simply beautiful. You can see the selector markings here for safe and fire. Safety moves very nice. I didn't have to adjust it out of the factory. I didn't have to loosen it or anything like that. It moves pretty freely. Up front you'll note the 386 mark right here, and that signifies the factory that it was made in. There's 2 main AK producing factories in China, and the 386 factory of course is one of them. You can see the rest of the receiver markings all the way down. Of course, the poly technologies here on the rear is what folks really want to see, and that stops right before the underfolding trunnion begins. I have relatively large hands, as many of you guys know. One thing I appreciate about the Chinese AKs is that their grips are relatively large compared to other nationalities. We also have the reinforcing plate right here that's very distinctive for Chinese AKs. The magazine release, very standard stuff, nothing really to write home about there. And the trigger is fantastic. Now, these guns were imported from 1988 to 1989. Of course, that all stopped when President Bush banned these by executive order, as I understand it, following the mass murder in Stockton, California, where somebody killed a bunch of folks with the AK. Of course, just like today, nothing's really changed. Politicians react emotionally and do silly things like ban Chinese AKs. So, unfortunately, these only came in for 2 years, and during that time, there was no 922R silliness that you had to deal with. So the trigger group here is an actual, factory Chinese trigger group. So it simply breaks awesome. It's really got a little bit of roughness in here, but once you hit that wall, the break is really smooth. The reset, very positive, and it breaks right around 3.5 pounds. So just good stuff all the way around. Nothing to complain about in terms of the trigger. We zoomed out so you can get a good look at the underfolding stock and the extended position here, and you can see it does have a downward angle to it. Now, some other countries out there are going to have a little bit more of a straight back profile, but this one's more classic, sort of like some of the early Soviet ones. So definitely locks up pretty solid. And to collapse it, for those new to AKs, you're just going to push this little button in here and rotate it forward. Get it down here in the collapse position, and it locks into place. It's got a little bit of play in it in the lock position, but certainly it's not coming loose. Disassembling the rifle is standard AK stuff. We're going to push in here on our recoil spring and pull up on the top cover. You should note the top cover is smooth, unlike some of the other AK variants out there. Recoil spring comes out, and you can see, just looking at the machining there, just how nice it is all the way around. Now, this particular rifle, I fired all but 10 of the rounds that have ever gone through it. The owner fired about 10 rounds through it with me, and the rest of them I put through there. So not a real high round count at all, maybe a few hundred rounds. All been flawless, of course, but just taking a look at the machining there, you'll see it's all pretty fresh overall. Take a look there at the trigger group. You can see it's sort of case color hardened. Really, again, it's simply fantastic. And you can see big, beefy wire springs reminiscent of most of the old AKs. In the trigger group, you can actually see the machining marks on there. So again, it's all billet, one-piece steel, no cast, none of that stuff. Very, very well made overall. And see in the barrel there, you can see it has a chrome lined chamber. Obviously, this one's relatively new, so rifling looks excellent as you'd expect. And just, again, everything in there is so beefy and well milled. So really nothing to complain about at all. So it's quite funny to think that a lot of folks said these were junk when they came out. So disassembling the bolt and carrier, you'll note there that on the bolt and carrier, there's no pinning or anything like that you see in a lot of modern imported AKs, and that's due to 922R compliance. Again, 922R wasn't around back when this rifle came in. Of course, all the numbers are matching throughout the rifle, and again, just get a good look there at the machining on there. It's just awesome all the way around. And the bolt, one thing that's a little bit different than some of the rifles of its era is that it did have a spring-loaded firing pin like you can see on a lot of the Bulgarian rifles these days. So that's designed to prevent slant fires. But other than that, pretty typical AK stuff. And again, just great fit and finish all the way around. There's a few other things I wanted to get into on the rifle, but one thing I want to point out is that this is not my rifle. And for those of you guys that watched the Canik TP9 SF video, I mentioned that there's a church about a half mile from the range where I shoot. And this rifle belongs to one of the gentlemen who attends that church. He actually comes out every now and then and kind of looks at the stuff I have and just talks about guns and stuff like that after church gets out. And he mentioned that he had one of these rifles to me, and I was like, no way, and he didn't seem to think much of it because he didn't understand the current value of these rifles. But I asked him if I could take it out and put a few rounds through it, do sort of a formal review, take it home for a week or so, and give you guys the close-ups and stuff like we're doing here today in the studio. So he agreed, and that's how we got this video. So thank you very much to him. I know he does watch the channel, so he'll be seeing this this video itself. So Basically, the point I wanted to get to was the current value of these rifles. So, Norinco Polytech Legends came in a few different ways, like we mentioned earlier. Most of them had the muzzle nut, but again, the gentleman said he bought this new with the muzzle nut and the brakes. So there's different variants that came out. Most common, they came in a sort of like a styrofoam box with 3 mags, and they were Chinese mags like the ones you see here, the flat back mags with the chrome followers. Now his rifle did come with one. It didn't have the chrome followers though, and it did say made in China on the bottom. This is actually one of my mags that I have in there now just for display purposes. But that's typically how they came in. So if you had one of those rifles with the box, with the manual, with 3 mags, and all the stuff that came with it in today's market, I just checked Gunbroker today. One of them was going with bids on it for $4,400. So they're very expensive. Now this, he doesn't have the box paperwork or any of that. This rifle as it sits here today would probably be, I would guess, because it's not exactly in the greatest condition. He's got some rust spots and stuff on there that you could clean up. But I would guess you could pretty conservatively get 23 to 27, maybe $2,800 for it. So in terms of AK variants, it's very expensive, no doubt about it. So it's kind of a nice treat to be able to have it in here and shoot it, obviously, and let you guys get a look at it. So really what makes it worth that much is, number one, it only came in the country for 2 years. And like I said, they didn't sell all that well back then. So there's just not a ton of them out there. And like I said, it really is an extremely high quality AK. There's just no getting around it. None of the 922R nonsense. And they came in both the underfolding stocks like you see here, as well as the fixed stocks. Now, personal preference for me, I prefer fixed stocks unless you're, I don't know, doing airborne operations are in the back of like a Soviet era BMP, which I'm not in either of those. So for me, I prefer the fixed stocks just for comfort and strength. But I know a lot of folks like the underfolder just because, number one, it looks cool. And of course, tons of them did come in that way. So it's completely authentic. So that's about it, guys. That is the rifle. You guys got a pretty good look at it here in this video, I think, anyway. If you guys have any questions about the rifle, by all means, post below in the comments section. I want to send a thank you shout out to the folks over at the AK Files that helped me with the history of the rifle, because honestly, I didn't know that. I wasn't into guns in the 80s, unfortunately. I wish I was, looking back on it now, and could have picked one of these up, but I wasn't. So those folks gave me a little bit of lesson on that, so I appreciate that. But that's about it, guys. Again, any questions, post below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page, as always, where I post a bunch of links to good deals and stuff like that that I find. So if you're not following me on Facebook, you should. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. See you in the next video.